perspective of just how similar they are in size. As I said, the inner sill to inner sill measurement is both the exact same. The wheelbase is only 60mm off, and the dimensions of the car are very, very similar. So I purchased this shell a few months ago, just with doors and stuff like that, because my original intention before actually owning a Cosmo, I was going to make a first lot of panels for Barden's car and sit them on this one as a test dummy, just to have a body sat in the shop or hung it from the roof, just a cool thing to have, I guess. It's a skill test. And now it's sort of become a reality. So I've done all my dimensions checks before I even purchased one to make sure that this is the perfect car to use as a base instead of like a cappuccino or anything smaller. I could just be a monkey and get a sawzall and rip it apart kind of thing, but I'm going to be pretty strategic with how I'm going to cut it, as to use most of the top half of the Cosmo, like upper scuttle and stuff like that. So I want to retain it looking like a Cosmo. I'm going to use all the skirts, keep all those areas in it, and then hybrid the towers and stuff into them. So I don't really want to just be plonking it on top cowboy spec. I'm going to actually really have a think about it, because I'll probably retain the Cosmo wheel tubs. Even though they are rotted, I'll remake them just so when you pop the boot and the bonnet on that car, it does look like a Cosmo still. It's not like you're just going to graft it over the top of this one, use this car's wheel tubs and stuff. They're much larger and obviously in the wrong spot. So I just primarily want the floor pan and seating areas, and like obviously the frame rails, but we'll see how much of a hybrid it becomes. I'm going to dock the window off and the quarters and stuff like that, just so I can compare them even further and then work out where my cuts are actually going to be, so I don't chop too much off. So I think I'll correct the 60mm wheelbase difference at the rear of the car, seeing was where behind the seat and the quarter end up. It would be more suited if you put this on a Series 2 Cosmo, which are 150mm longer behind the door in this area. Very, very similar cars though. If this Cosmo chassis was in a better shape, you could adapt the towers very, very easily and put the MX5 cradle to the same rails that are actually in this car. But they are very, very similar looking. They both step up in the same spot, same shape. It's almost as if they designed the MX5 with this as inspiration. So much inner strength in these things. I reckon this weighs about 50 kilos on its own. It is so heavy. But as you can see, it's so much inner quadruple skinned bracing inside them, obviously because they got no roof. But pretty crazy. Weighs absolutely nothing already just from moving this. It's so heavy, I couldn't believe it. Ready to start bracing it up. Just going to put like a box perimeter around the tunnel, front to back on the parcel tray and dash, a box between the roof and the rad support. It's like something else here, because once these rails are gone, it's only really the skirts and stuff that are holding it, and that way I can pick it up with the hoist arms. Just for reference, the front's already twisted. The passenger side is down a touch, as you can see from the nose cone to the scuttle. I think it's because it's had a hit here. So just so we know, it didn't actually twist before I jigged it all up. Meth head constructions on there just to tie it all together for where I cut this stuff out. I didn't want to go flush with the boot because I'll be reaching in here to cut all the wheel tubs and stuff out. So very crackhead looking, but it'll work. It's only temporary, just until it's sitting back on its floor pan. Okay, we are suspended for cutting. So now I can cut all the rails and stuff out. I know that the shell itself is going to be sweet. Look at the state of the floor, and it's only probably 50% cut out. Crust. Just to gauge how perfect this chassis is for this car, firewalls are at the same rough length, door openings at the same length, the rear wall also would be at the same length. It's just the wheelbase I've got to cheat forward, but such a similar car. but the floor pan itself, which is what I wanted, is a perfect fit. So I knew that was going to be the easy part, and the rails, just a little bit of stuffing around just to move them all inboards, but that's what you do. Still easier than repairing all the old junk. So much multi-layer strength and like all these little pieces that some areas have to be bolted because you obviously couldn't get a welder in there once all these pieces are in. So pretty crazy what goes into these cars when they haven't got a roof. Just to drum it into everyone's brain that there was absolutely nothing savable on this car. Like every single layer inside and out is rotted. It's a complete remake of every single thing on this car. Nothing is usable. Maybe the top half, maybe this is just as a template really, but all this water has seeped into every single layer and just rotted everything. So strangely enough, on the Cosmo, the floor actually hangs down 150 from the top of the sill there. Hangs down a fair bit. So see from the floor there, obviously hard to see it on the tape, but that's 150 from the bottom of that floor hanging up to the top of the pinch. So hangs down a fair bit. Yeah, the floor hangs down about that far past the sill. So I'm thinking it works out to be exactly the same really. This floor to the top of the pinch is 150 and it's going to hang down the same amount. So whether I raise it up so the floor is actually level with the bottom of the sill, or it will be determined as to where this top of the rail height sits, because I think the top of the rail is going to end up about here. So we'll see once I start lowering it down onto there and see where everything ends up. What a mess though. So much cut out and so much cut off just to get to the bare bones of the floor pan itself, which is what I wanted. But geez, 2 days of cutting, so much mess. I've already swept up once yesterday and now I've just cut all the rest off. Nightmare. Okay, lowering down for the first time just to see where everything's going to sit, and obviously gonna have to trim more out of the firewall, and to allow for the rails to come down to height. I know it's going to end up around here once it comes down fully. Just gradually cut piece by piece. Let's look at the relation to the firewall, getting the firewall directly in line and where the rails would end. So instead of having this old crusty front bar mount that's been gas axed off on the other side, at least I'll be able to put a custom one of these on to adapt the stock bumper to this, because we've got to drop down about 150. So obviously this is going to sit flush on top of the rail here, so the headlight will almost be touching the rail. So all this has got to go. See, I would have chopped the rails down if my headlight area wasn't in such bad shape. Someone's already cut this section out and took it for their car, so I don't think it's any harm trimming that to this level. We're not gaining anything by cutting the rails off, so all this is real crusty and that's got to support the bonnet and stuff like that, so I'd rather adapt to these fresh rails, and that way the bonnet hinges and stuff can be mounted off something actually solid. So nearly down the whole way, got about 100mm to go. I'm just going to get rid of the stock column now. I was just curious on where it actually ended up. It's on a massive angle, and I like my steering columns straight. I don't like steering on a massive angle there. But even with the stock pedal box, the MX5 column should come through the middle of it. So curious how that all works out. So I'm about 50mm away from where I need to be. I didn't trim this straight. Take a bit more off the tunnel area. The backside's ready to start taking it off the tubs. So I've got to take about a 50mm strip off, obviously, so the sill gets to the right height, but everywhere else, width-wise, so perfect. Okay, I took 40mm off the tub height. I didn't want to take 60 off because I was scared of cutting too much, but obviously we've got to come down a bit more to meet the MX5 top of the sill. But have a look at the back wall location, exactly the same. Firewall location, exactly the same. Width, exactly the same for the braces, for the sill width, for the back wall. It's just meant to be. So I'm going to drop everything down, probably another 40mm I think, because I don't want to have the sill hanging down like they do on the normal Cosmo. I just want to lift the floor up to suit. So I'll trim a bit more off and drop the car down lower. So engine bay looks like this at the moment. So I'm going to bring these rails in 100 each end, front and back, and bring both sets of rails inwards. I just wanted the floor pan in. So now that the floor pan's in the right spot, and I can unpick the rails and move them in. Okay, so this would fit standard wheels, no stress. It gained 50mm of track per side, but for me it's not really going to fit the wheels that I want to run, so I'm going to move these rails inboard 100mm per side, front and back. And I don't really like that the rails hang below either, so this does end up at the same height as the Cosmo floor originally, and the leaf spring hanger actually hangs down like right here, really low, but I don't really like that, so I'm going to body drop mine further and get the bottom of the sill flush with the floor, and I might even put the rails above the floor, or body drop it so far that I put the rails flush with the bottom of the sill. I have to see. But same as the rear, I want to move the rails inboard 100mm just for better wheels. Other than that, can retain the whole top half of the Cosmo scuttle, firewall, heater, all the bonnet catch and stuff like that. Just got to remake all of the bonnet hinge supports and stuff like that because it's all rotted away, but coming together. I'm going to pick up cradles and all arms and stuff like that tomorrow, so I can see just how far I want to narrow everything. I want to move the rails inboard 100mm front and back, just because I don't really want to run skinny wheels on there, or hubcaps, stockies, whatever you want to call them. I want to run decent wheels on the back, so I'd rather move all the rails and everything in 100mm, shorten the cradles to suit, so we can get some decent wheels under it. Okay, I got a seat, some cradles front and back, and another whole shell, so hopefully I can see these in the car in the next few days and then work out how far to shorten them for the wheel track that I want. So I'm just going to throw the seat in there and then measure from the seat base to the roof to figure out how much clearance there is, because Barden is a pretty tall dude and he's not small like me, so I might not be able to body drop his one as far as I want to go with mine, so I might have to leave his at stock floor height. So without a seat in at all, at factory floor height, we've only got 975, so not a lot of room. So now I'll measure off the seat base, so about 100 forward from the cushion, we've only got 820, so that's not a lot of room for a tall person. So as it goes gradually back, obviously you'll get more and more, but so from the same position, 975 to the top of the roof. Floor is below the chassis rail height in the car, which does explain why the floor does sit so low and so far beyond the sill there, like it's level with the bottom of the leaf spring hanger, which is pretty ridiculous. It looks horrific if you're actually looking under the sill of one of these, but it's how they are factory, so to see what we can do there. The seat at the factory height of the floor, and me fully stretched out. I can completely stretch out, I'm short, but I've got about much room above my head and I'm really short. So look at the window opening compared to here. It's pretty small cars. With my legs stretched out, that's with the seat the whole way forward, I can still move the seat back another 200. I've only got it laid back like this because this bar's in the way, so easily fit lengthwise. Just the height will be the restriction for how far you can actually body drop one. It obviously fits really good at the factory sill height and floor heights with like the firewall and stuff. Everything sits really good. You could almost use the whole MX5 dash, heater box, aircon, everything really. Like you use the whole center console because it'll all bolt in, because the inside of this car is now a whole MX5. So anything that is on the inside besides the door cards would work, and you could easily modify the door cards. But I'm just going to see which way he wants to go about it. I'm more inclined to leave the stock top half of the dash and heater box and stuff like that, just because I want it to look old. But it'd be pretty cool that you can just run the whole MX5 interior and save so much work. So even the rear, the boot floor height was nearly dropped down back to the same factory height, but because this got such a long bum, it's way too short, the rails, so the rails are going to have to be extended to meet the beaver of this car. So pretty funny, the Cosmo skirt support is almost sitting dead flat on the top of the MX5 rail. You could still run the stock master and clutch. The tunnel box for the starter area still would work fine, all the stock heater box, bonnet support, stuff like that. Even the rails come all the way to the dead front of the car where the bumper mount originally is. You could just retrofit a flat mount off the front. So pretty funny that it works so well. And the sides, it's like the perfect width for the car, but because I'm moving the rails in, you're actually going to see them poke through the top of the skirt support. Maybe it's pretty thick there, it's probably got like 100mm void before the tower's actually hitting against it, but I'll see how far they come in. It'll probably look pretty factory once it's hybrided into there. And as we can see, the wheel track, that's just not going to cut it. So the wheelbase itself is correct up front. Going to take 60 out of the back, but I'm going to move the rails in about 120 I think in the front. Just going to put a wheel under there and see what fits best. Bringing the track in 60 aside up front would return it back to standard Cosmo track width, but even then you've got to run pizza cutters to even fit anything in the guard, so yeah, I'm not really interested in that. Going to all this effort just to run standard wheels is not really my jam. Now I don't own any 4x100 wheels because that's more suited to front wheel drive pattern, so I'm just going to try my 1000s wheels on the front just to get a rough estimate where the track's sitting. So I'll probably just bash all these studs out except for one just to hold it. So that's unmodified track width with an 8.0 on it at full droop, so no good, got to come in a fair bit. So this is the same 8.0 on full compression without being body dropped, so obviously natural drastic camber, and the floor pan and rails are sitting well below the sill, about 70mm below where they are factory on the Cosmo, so definitely in need of an 80mm body drop, and pull the track inwards about 100mm, and then obviously bring the track in because we've nearly got the whole hub hanging out of the car, which is not good. So the reason the rear looks like it's hanging out so drastically is because the rear of the car tapers skinnier. So that's rear at full droop with an 8.0, and it's sitting just under 90mm out. So I'm going to bring the wheelbase forward 90mm in the rear, and it's perfect because you can just drill these spots out, slide the whole rear rail forwards, and nothing's actually going to foul here, so perfect for that. And that's only an 8.0 with no camber, and that would fit pretty well if you only shortened it 100, but I think on the rear I might go like 150 to get some good size like 9.5s or something under the back. Surprisingly 13s don't look too out of place on the wheel arch. I thought they would be a lot bigger of a wheel arch, but obviously not. So from here I'll go back up, pull the cradles back out of it and lift the body back up, and I'll move the rear wheelbase forwards and bring the rails inwards, and then I'll sit the body back down on top and start body dropping it further till I get the sill flush with the bottom of the rails, and then happy days. So I think I'll only body drop my own car, and I'll leave Barden's the factory height because he's much taller than me, so he needs the actual headroom there of the floor being at the factory height. So lucky I'm small, I'll actually be able to deal with it being 80mm less clearance on my head, and I'll just make up a new inner sill to accommodate that, because if we lose 80mm we're going to come to about there. Pretty basic shapes on all these things. As suspected, the rail doesn't meet the floor, it comes short of it, so it's just a matter of just drilling all the spots out along on these brackets, trim 90 off the end, slide the rails in where you want them, and then to change the wheelbase, same deal here, just drill all these spots out and you can just slide it across wherever you want it. Happy days. And with the front, same deal. You can see inside there the rail just meets up on the bottom, so if I take this plate off the top I'll be able to move the rails inwards, and then make another plate over the top that's longer to accommodate. Pouring rain at the moment, so it's going to be pretty hard to explain anything. Taking these multi-layers off gives me access to the end of the rail to shorten, and I took it this far because I want to get access to that structural point that holds the cradle pin. So now I can just move this all forwards and spot it all back together. But I won't post much of this because it's real boring, it's just drilling out spot welds and moving stuff, so I'll probably skip all this. So a few years ago I randomly shortened a rack to 400mm pivot points just because I wanted to see what was involved in shortening a rack, and I've just kept it for so many years in the cupboard, and turns out once I shorten this 125 aside it ends up 400 pivot points. So pretty cool. I've already got a rack made. So front, do the same thing, take this top off, show that the rail doesn't go all the way to the firewall, unpick this, put the rails where I want, and then rebuild all this across. Once the car's actually up in the air I can rebuild all the lowers, but just get the rails where I want them to be first, and then yeah, just piece by piece put it all back together. This is a 8 neg 12 on the back, so plenty of room, and I'm obviously going to cut the tubs off here at a 20mm lip and then extend that so that this face meets the tower and can bolt to it, and brings the tub the whole way there, again another 100mm. So I should be able to get probably 9.5 or a 10 on the back pretty easily. So made to be, it checks this out. This is flimsy, so have to be careful. It's got to go there. Look at the toe points. Like, come on. How's the toe points? Get out of here. It's just made to work. So obviously I've only got one stud holding these wheels on because they're a different stud pattern, and I've only got one lower control arm on the front. I actually haven't got a bottom lower control arm, so I will sit it on the ground off the hoist to see where it's actually sitting before I lock everything in permanently. Everything's just stitched in at the moment, so pretty confident though that it's all where it needs to be. Bottom of the rail is level with the bottom of the sill, so it's all enough clearance now. So this is lowered just on the hoist arms there, so probably like 100mm from where it will actually sit. And as you can see, 8.0, fitting plenty of room on the front. So that's an 8 neg 12 on the back, so also plenty of room. It's body dropped now, so the floor is pretty damn high. I'm really short and my head is so close to that roof, so I have to get lower seat mounts and just decide what seats I actually want to run. But everything else fitting pretty snug. Just got to infill everything all now and brace everything back to what I can. Probably get rid of obviously everything that's rusty and remake all those sections, so there's no point welding anything to any of that. So same as all this, the whole Rio for the nose cone is rotted away, so sort that out. But pretty funny that the toe points don't even require any mods. That is hilarious to me. Alright, so that's about ride height for the car. I usually run my cars about 30mm from rail to floor. It's enough clearance for everything. So that's just 30mm box under the cross member. Still ample room under here for wider wheels, so once I get some adjustable arms for this top and some drop knuckles, that'll allow me to really see what wheels fit the best once I can pull the camber out. Same as the rear, I need adjustable arms for the top because they're just cambering in too much at the moment, but well, it gives you a rough idea of how it'll sit. Roof height is so low compared to my coupe. Wow, it's got like 200mm on it. This car is like waist high. So the roof height is bang on 1 meter. Limbo comp champion this car will be. Okay, so I'm going to give the door skin a crack, and it's going to unbend all the skin here first so I can template it, and just like a little tricky bend up the top, so I'll probably have to make some tooling for that, we'll see. But I'll get the main shape done first, and then I'm pretty sure Buttons has a set of handles. My car doesn't have doors at all, so obviously no handles, so I'll leave the handle pocket blank for now and I can add it in later. So I'll just focus on making the outer skin. I won't worry about trying to get hinges or the inner and stuff like that, because if doors pop up then they're more than likely just going to have rotted outers, but the inners could be good still, so I'll just only do the outer for now. Don't worry about repairing hanging panels, it's not really a priority, but I kind of want to get the line running the whole way across so that I can start gapping everything up and then pull the top of the quarter off. Okay, door skin is templated and put onto a new sheet. So I've included these segmented folds here that get spotted back to the frame itself. Hopefully I can get that out of one piece. Might have to make a bit of tooling up to get that. The handle I've left blank at the moment because I'll add that in last. I think with the handle pocket it's going to be the same as the 1200 skin I did. It's going to be a lot of stretching here, and then I've got to stretch the surrounding area that wants to sink in. Same as how I did it with the pocket on this 1200 handle. I knocked all that in first and I had to stretch the surrounding area. Gave it a quick slip roll just to give it a pre-bend for the door, and now it's marking out the body line. So this is where you can just fuck the whole piece up and throw it in the bin if you put the line in the wrong spot or mark it the wrong width. So going to be trial and error. I think I made it at 12 mil last time. It measures up from there from 11 to 12, so hoping that's what I did last time. We'll see what happens here. I might put it in the bin. Well, here goes nothing. Garbage or work. 20% chance of working, I think. It's okay at both ends, but the middle, just a bit more round in the middle. So it's weird that it's not getting as much pressure on this center die. Might need to shim it and play around a little bit, but see how it goes. Guinea pig was going okay, but then it dug into the die. I let it sit down, too much pressure on it. So now I've got lines both sides. So I'm either going to have to clearance the dies or try a different approach. Maybe not roll it first. I might roll it after and just try and do this first. It goes from bad to worse. So I got the lines out by putting it on the wheel, and I thought, you know what, I'll just run it through the die again, clean it up. Fully fucked it. Made the line wide as and all wobbly. So won't do that again. Idiot. Yeah, it's rough. At least lets me figure out how to make all this area and do the top edge, and maybe later on if I end up making another die I can run the body line through with some linear tracks to keep it dead straight, but at least it lets me figure out how to make all the rest of the top of the door and stuff, even though the body line's not perfect. It's a good test piece. So I have the shape roughed out, so I can figure out how to do this top section now, which is like a bump this way, and then it's got a 10mm flat and then a 30mm return down again where it goes into the door edge. So it's going to be pretty interesting, this sort of shape here. I can get the initial fold here for this 10mm line, but I don't know how I'm going to bump it back up. I might have to make a little round edge tooling just to run through to bump that area. I might roll the bead roller through there. I just don't know how it'll be very tight against that 10mm edge. I have to play around with a few things to see how I can get that shape. So I got that kick back up by running it through a round wheel in the bead roller. I'll skip to this. Just by running it through this guy, just to push it up, but that also concaved it in under the line, so I had to go on the wheel now and put a 2-inch lower under there just to bump that area back up, because it goes gradual and then really ramps off up the top here. So all trial and error really. No idea how to go about one of these, so just seeing what works, what doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you just throw it in the bin and start again. So I'm going to attempt to bring that next fold around, that 10mm top edge. So that's that top edge now. I've got to go down 15 and across on this area here now. Bit of a strategic nightmare, this one. So yeah, it's pretty rough. Don't think I'll be using it, but it's good for a reference and a trial run to figure out these shapes and see what needs to happen. This obviously needs to roll over, but the edge is catching, so I can't actually let it roll over any further. But it might be able to be saved if I make another die that can run a sharp body line on there with some linear tracks on my machine. Not sure. I won't throw it in the bin just yet. It might be useful for my car if I can't find doors. Alright, so I got a bit of flat bar, just the right shape for the line, and welded it into the dolly stand. Now, it seems to be working, so I might be able to save this one just yet. It's just, see how it's just really rounded off here, so I've got to use this hammer to get the radius back in there, and then sharpen the top up again against that bit of flat bar. So it was really the center that was my issue. The ends were okay, but see how it goes. Might be able to save this just yet. Okay, well that worked a lot better than I thought, so that's a win. Now I can use that same die on this area that I thought I was going to struggle with, but that'll be easy now. Cheering. So I'm going to wrap the video up there. I've just got the door shell clamped in place on this one, just to double check it on things and see what it actually needs. But I'll collect some parts for this car now that I've got it all worked out. I'm going to mount the steering rack, mount the column, get all that all worked out. I've already shortened the rack to suit this car's pivot points now, and it's just a matter of collecting parts, get a control arm for the other side, and that way I can get it rolling in a sense. So at the moment I've got no control arm there, and all my wheels are 4x114, so you can't really roll them on one stud. It's a bit of an egg shape. So thanks for watching, and hopefully post another video shortly.